Greetings Guardians, my name is Bife here. This video is inevitably going to be titled as a quote part 1, unquote, to the question of who the conductor is. I won't lie, I've been putting off this script for a while, but now that it's all in the forefront of the narrative, I think it's important to get some of it covered ASAP. Today, I wanted to focus on the one theory to answer this question that is so obvious that it has become obvious to even passive observers of the lore and the story. So let's talk about who the conductor is and their inevitable links to Maya Sundaresh. But first, I want to give a huge thank you to Starforge. Why? Because they gave away a whole PC for the GCX Charity Marathon. This was a part of my block, and we raffled it off to anyone who donated $60 or more to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. This was one of their Horizon 2 Pro PCs, and it includes a 4060 GPU, so you can get stunning graphical quality. I want to say thanks to Starforge for being so generous and for sponsoring this channel for as long as they have. It is one thing to go ahead and jump into a mutually beneficial agreement with any YouTuber, it's a whole other thing to agree to put up an entire PC for the sake of St. Jude and the kids there, so thank you very much. What's more, you can get some of their PCs for yourself. They come pre-assembled, so you don't need to worry about building them. And they come with a 2-year parts and labor warranty included. They're also available at a bunch of different price points to suit your needs. Check my link down below and grab one for yourself. And thank you again to Starforge Systems for sponsoring this video and supporting the kids. So, first things first, how can we confirm that the conductor is somehow related to Maya Sundaresh in the story? Well, there are literally dozens of indications. We'll start with the note that this week, when we completed the story, we received a lore page that was quite clearly from the perspective of Maya Sundaresh. Perhaps we can instead look at the Balance of Power Hunter Exotic Lore tab, where there is a direct moment from Maya Sundaresh's story that feels like it ties into all of this. Or perhaps we can look to the items in the season pass, such as the Spectrum Shell and the Polychroma Ship, which both seem to be from the perspective of a character like Maya that is overseeing the Vex. The Ghost missions from Micah 10 reference M-Sund 12 at one point, and how they seemingly have continued their activity. There are various moments that corroborate what has happened within the Veil containment logs. They have a lot of overlapping details, in fact. To put it really frankly, there is so much stuff hinting towards this being some iteration of Maya Sundaresh that it would be remarkable and unbelievable if it wasn't Maya Sundaresh, at least in some form. So, all this leads us to a pair of questions, now that we practically speaking know that it must be Maya Sundaresh and that there is almost no one else who this seemingly might be in the lore. Those questions are, who was Maya Sundaresh, and, strangely enough, which Maya Sundaresh do we seem to be dealing with? That second question is a little complicated, but I'm sure you'll start to understand why as we go. So, let's begin and explain both questions by jumping in with a bit of a timeline. Who was Maya Sundaresh? Well, she was an Ishtar Collective researcher in the Golden Age, and, along with her wife Chioma Essie, she co-founded Neomuna, the secret city on Neptune. The timeline of Maya is inevitably going to be a confusing one, so before I start talking about it, let me add more to the confusion by saying that there are many more Mayas than just the one. Sufficiently mind-boggled? Yeah, okay, it's time to start explaining the timeline. Speaking of which, Martin, go ahead and show them the full image. I want to make it clear that this image of the timeline you're seeing, this is really simplifying a whole lot, but Maya's story is one with many branches. A lot of branches, in fact. So, let's start here at the very beginning on the left-hand side. In the Golden Age, Maya was just one person, and things for the moment were somewhat simple. That is, until the Ishtar Academy incident. This is a story that's explained in the Grimoire cards from Destiny 1, the Vex Grimoire cards in particular. The short version is that the Ishtar Collective found some Vex units in the ruins on Venus. Those Vex remains were being studied, but one of the units, known as Specimen 12, started to simulate the researchers. In fact, it simulated 227 perfect copies of each of the 4 Ishtar Team Collective members that were on site, including Chioma Essie and Maya Sundaresh. Rasputin was called in to save the 227 copies, as they were trapped in Vex simulations and were otherwise identical to the original researchers. Their own pain, should they suffer under the Vex, would essentially be no different from the pain of real people, because Vex simulations are indistinguishable from reality. When Rasputin successfully extracted the simulated copies, they unanimously made the decision to venture together into the Vex network so that they could find out more about this enemy. And so, 227 copies of each of the 4 researchers went out into the Vex network, including the 227 copies of Maya Sundaresh. So this is our first timeline branch that breaks off from Maya's own story. In particular, it seems like we've almost certainly encountered the machinations of one of these copies before. You remember this from a certain Insight Terminus strike?
Location secured, Commander Zavala.
Good work, Guardian. What intel did you discover?
There's an almost unreadable data artifact here labeled Oxa. It's heavily corrupted, but I'm able to make out MSund-12 from the access log. What is Oxa, and who was MSund-12?
Those are questions for another day, I suppose. But for now, well done.
Now, to be clear, this has always been a bit of an assumption, but presumably it is correct to say that MSund-12, the MSund-12 that we see here in fact, is the 12th of the 227 copies of Maya Sundaresh. So that's where our story about Maya branches first. Let's go ahead and leave this lower set of branches here for now, and just indicate that MSund-12 has her own branch, because there are other moments in the story that we're going to want to look at that potentially loop back around to MSund-12, and having her distinctly on her own is worth knowing about. So, there is the original, and then there are 227 copies. That's already 228 Mayas, and that's about 227 Mayas more than most people are happy with. Maya's story in her actual physical non-Vex simulated life would continue onward. She would momentarily leave the Ishtar Collective, she joined a private research group on Earth, and they would create a device later used by the FWC to experience visions of the future. This device, seemingly, was almost identical to the Oxa machine in terms of its capabilities, though it was only possible to be used if the user was an exo. However, after too much time separated from her wife, Maya would return to Chioma Essie and would assist on a variety of projects across the system. The two of them would survive the collapse, and thanks to the Exodus Indigo, they would take refuge in the Neptunian city of Neomuna. From here, we learned more about Maya's story thanks to the Veil containment logs. As time went on, Maya Sundaresh would become obsessed with the Veil and would eventually use it to power the city of Neomuna, but that was just one of its outward uses that was more ubiquitous. There are many other things the Veil was capable of doing, and Maya would begin to investigate them with some fervor. This is where we need to take a look at the story held within each of the entries of the Veil containment logs. Just be aware that as we make notes on these logs, we will inevitably be revisiting them at a later date when we take a closer examination of Maya's story. First of all, though, take a listen to this quick snippet.
Chioma Essie. Research log. Veil interface. Maya and I have finalized a prototype interface for the Veil. Hopefully it'll allow our research team to investigate it in detail. The system's designed like an orchestra, with a central conductor directing a symphony of minds to act like a distributed network. The idea came to us by watching how collective networks like SIVA and the Vex operate. The hope is we can aggregate and parse the vast amounts of psychic data emitting from the Veil, turn it into something intelligible. If we're successful, the interface will provide us with a starting point for any future technological research tied to the Veil.
How very intriguing. So the Veil interface involved a chorus of different minds, and a quote-unquote conductor to lead them. Sounds very familiar to the choral Vex, doesn't it? Unfortunately, the initial iteration of what comes next shows us that Maya's initial experiments with this concept were a failure.
Chioma SE. Research log. Veil interface. Supplemental. They're all dead. Chorus. Conductor. Everyone. It was too much. Swept their minds away like grains of sand on a beach. They're all dead.
This setback didn't stop Maya Sundaresh. She continued her research, leveraging the data gained from the death of her science team, and she went on further with the research of the Veil, even reverse engineering the systems behind the interface. Instead of passing out the data of consciousness within the Veil to others so that it could be understood, she passed data of her mental imprints through a series of dead exos within the chorus back into the conductor seat that was linked to the Veil. The result of this experiment was that Maya Sundaresh created a new exo with her own mental imprint. She created consciousness, a unique method of creating an exo that seemingly has only happened once. And the exo that had been recreated and now imprinted with her own mental imprint? It was called Lakshmi.
Chioma SE. Research log. Lakshmi 2.
What?
Maya's... I don't even know what to say. I'd recused myself from further experiments. Told her to take some time off. She refused. And the minute I wasn't there, she started hauling the brain-dead exos out of cold storage, hooking them up to the Veil interface. She burned through dozens of them, reversed the entire machine's design, used a chorus of brain-dead exos to funnel data down to the conductor seat, projecting a mental imprint. Hers. I didn't know Lakshmi 2, but Maya did. And now she's made this thing. It speaks with her voice, has some of her memories. The way it looks at me. It's like it knows something I don't.
Osiris, do you recognize that name? Lakshmi?
Yes. And no. Lakshmi 2 was an exo and once leader of a faction on Earth known as the Future War Cult. She died over a year ago. But she never once made mention of any of this. Of Neomuna, of Maya. Did she know? Did she remember? This is all as much a revelation to me as it is to you. It throws everything she did while in the last city into question.
I mean, if she was a copy of Dr. Sundaresh, then is she really dead?
I don't know. For now, I must deliver a rather uncomfortable report to Ikora.
So Maya was able to imprint her own mind onto a formerly dead exo who was known as Lakshmi 2. Essentially, Maya learned that she could make a mental copy of herself using the Veil interface. This in itself is remarkable. Lakshmi 2, of course, would go on to lead the FWC, as Osiris said, but that wouldn't be until Lakshmi was escorted to Earth alongside the Stargazer, one of the Cloud Striders in the early days, who severed Neomuna's connection to the rest of the system by removing its records from Rasputin. So for the moment, until such an event occurred, both Lakshmi 2 and Maya Sundaresh would exist alongside one another. This is where our timeline for Maya Sundaresh sort of splits again, with Lakshmi 2 getting her own branch, distinct from Maya Sundaresh and yet inextricably also linked. Now, we not only have Maya and her 227 copies, including MSUNT 12, but we also have a 229th iteration of this person, Lakshmi 2. Following this discovery, Maya would refine the Veil interface even further, and she would eventually be able to connect people to the Veil without them dying. This was seen as a major scientific breakthrough, and was a huge step towards the people of Neomuna creating their own Cloud Arc interfaces that would allow them to exist in a digital state while their physical bodies were held in stasis. But as time went on, Maya would eventually succumb to her own obsession, with fatal consequences.
Chioma Essie. Personal log. Incidental. Maya's dead. I found her in the conductor's chair, alone. Nobody knows what she was doing. Her copy, that thing, Lakshmi, is still developmentally incomplete. It doesn't understand what happened to Maya. I had it quarantined until we do something.
Maya's placement in the conductor's chair seems to imply that she was trying to interface with the Veil directly. Why she would do this is still a mystery. But definitively, this is where the original Maya Sundaresh would pass away, unless her consciousness was somehow preserved within the Veil and shepherded off to somewhere else. The way that Exos and their deaths are described, their consciousness is unraveled and they billboarded. This implies that if they do still exist, they are but fabrics of their former mental selves, unwound, existing within the weave and weft of the Veil. But the Veil containment logs also show us something remarkable that happens later. The return of an older name to the Neomuna side of the story, one that is familiar.
The Veil is too great a power for humanity to wield responsibly. All that's left is to close down the facility. Neomuna will go on. Humanity will persist, on the back of our unspeakable work. But I won't pass that guilt on to humanity's future. My hands can be bloodied. Let the children have innocence. And in my dissolution, I will find peace.
I don't know if I agree with Chioma's choice to hide the sins of the past. But I also do not know what I would do in her place.
Quinn says there's a data signature on this file, like something else was crawling the network. Vex signature. What's MSund 12?
There's one log left to the crypt. Perhaps we'll find out.
Assuming that our early assertion that MSund 12 is the 12th of 227 copies of Maya Sundaresh is correct, then that means that MSund 12, aka Maya, passed through this way and discovered Chioma Essie's logs here, almost as if she was searching for something, or perhaps someone. Chioma was also searching for something as well, for the original woman that she had fallen in love with. It would lead her to the breaking point where she would request that she be assimilated into the Vex network to try and find a copy of her long-lost lover. She would reach out to them, and this would be the end of her story.
Years ago, back on Venus, the Vex simulated copies of us, Maya and I, trapped in a virtual hell. After so long, even hell can look like heaven, can't it? I'm tired. I'm done. Maya has to be out there. The Maya I remember. And all I want is one more moment with her. To hold her in my arms. Tell her that I love her. So she can tell me to hush one more time. If we learned anything from the Veil, it's that eventually we all have to learn to let go So, I made contact with the Vex. I'm ready. And it's time to say goodbye.
From what we know, this is the end of Chioma Essie's tale, but it was not necessarily the end of Maya Sundaresh. Her original self was gone, and Lakshmi would of course die off after Savathun deceived her in the season of the Splicer. But those 227 copies of Maya, some of them are still out there. It's likely that some of them have passed away. If memory serves, this is a note that is commented on by the Aspect Law book from Shadowkeep. There are also some copies of Chioma and Maya that have been separated and might have had one of the couple of women die off during their voyage through the network. But most crucially of all, if MSUND 12 is one of those 227 copies, she is still out there. She is still making moves, and some of those moves have been as recent as just before the time of the Witness's defeat.
And stay down!
I've got Bean's signal. It looks like he's gone deeper into Nessus. It should be easy to follow him. As for what Kargan's clone was doing here, it looks like he was trying to access Vex data on Oxa again.
That's the Scion prediction machine, right? Sees the future in branching paths? Future War Cult has something similar.
Based on what I'm seeing here, I can't be sure they aren't the same thing. The same design. But I don't know how that's possible. Kargan was trying to access the Soul Divisive's research on the Veil as well. I don't understand how all these things are connected. But I can tell where the orders are coming from. A Scion named Atzat. And these orders are recent. I think there might be defector branches within the Shadow Legion. One's not loyal to the Witness.
And they're trying to pin down potential outcomes. Make plans for what? The event of our success?
Maybe. But it looks like something blocked them. But I don't know how that's possible.
Why? What stopped Kargan?
If this log is correct, Maya Sundaresh did.
Maya, why does that name sound so familiar?
Why don't you and I talk about that offline, Cade? Let the Guardian and Ghost track down Bean.
Yeah, that sounds good.
I'm glad you were able to rescue Bean. He's going to be a great asset to healing the Traveler. I can't help but be worried about what you found while searching for him. I thought the Scion defector sided with the Witness. But it's looking more and more like that may be a deception. There's something else going on here. Something we're going to have to tackle head-on in the future, if we're lucky.
Maya Sundaresh has her fingerprints all over this story and all over the Vex network, and the recent happenings within it point only to her. And now it appears that there is something else that has spurred her previous plans into being. The Echo. She must have seen it as it fell to Nessus, and must have ascended with its power, becoming not M-Sund 12 if it is M-Sund 12, not Maya Sundaresh as she previously was, but the Conductor, the commander of all the Vex in her proximity. Whether this is M-Sund 12 precisely or not is hard to confirm, because again, there are hundreds of copies of Maya out there. We also don't know definitively if Maya herself still lives on after her consciousness was merged with the Veil and she died on Neomuna. There are still quite a few questions, but one thing has become somewhat clear. With her command of the Echo, Maya has been able to harness a society so ancient and so powerful as to defy the universe itself. With the Vex at her fingertips, she will be able to remake Nessus, and then the rest of the Vex, then the rest of the system, and then the universe. Her chorus must be challenged by a force that is paracausal in nature, lest it should overwhelm us entirely. There is also one last note to be made. Throughout a variety of seasonal items that you can acquire in Echoes, there is a strange log of sorts that we can read. A log that was written by Maya, it seems, and which displays Maya's thoughts. There is a lot more going on with the Echo than we first realized, and this log is something I want to cover in depth very soon, especially when the Conductor themselves is revealed. Assuming that it is Maya who is the Conductor, we will be able to sit and look and listen to her plans. There is also something behind all of this which is yet more haunting, a so-called primary query, which now haunts Maya's moves, and she speaks of with great reverence. She also speaks of how there is one who joined her to make company alongside her, perhaps one found within the Echo. It's worth remembering at this point that the Echoes are the remnants of the Witness that were left after its destruction. Echoes that are full of memory, brought to life by the Traveler's light. Whose memories is still to be seen. But I think it's going to be clear very soon who this is. I want to explore these notes more thoroughly when we have concrete confirmation that this is indeed Lakshmi II who conducts the Vex. The implications of what that could mean will help explain a lot, and they will help us navigate this ever-changing system and its strange turn of events concerning the Vex. But that's all from me for now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, and let me know your own thoughts down below in the comments section. It feels almost certain that this is Maya Sundaresh. Do you think it's anyone else? If you do, let me know. But, of course, know that as per usual, your viewership as always has been quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.